They chained her, starved her, dragged her to a tomb where every Omega before her had died screaming. The council called it justice. The pack called it mercy. But Elira Vance, the girl they labeled defective, the wolf they threw away like garbage, saw it for what it really was: murder dressed in ceremony. Shackled in iron, bleeding onto frozen stone, she stood at the sealed door of a 200-year-old prison. Behind it, death. Or something worse. But here's what they didn't know. The girl with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous creature alive. Stick around. Hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see where you're watching from. Because this story, it's just getting started. The iron cuffs had been on Elira's wrists for 3 days. They didn't fit right. Too tight on the left, loose enough on the right that the metal had rubbed her skin raw, leaving a ring of dried blood that cracked every time she moved. The guards hadn't cared. Why would they? She was Omega, defective, already dead in every way that mattered. The cart rattled over frozen ground, each jolt sending a spike of pain through her ribs. Elira kept her eyes down, her breathing shallow. Beside her, 2 other Omegas sat in identical chains, girls she'd never met, never spoken to. One was crying silently, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. The other stared straight ahead, eyes glassy and empty, like she'd already left her body behind. Elira understood both reactions. She felt neither. "Keep moving," one of the guards barked from horseback. His voice was bored. He'd done this before. Would do it again. This was routine. The Moonveil Pack didn't execute Omegas outright. That would be barbaric. Instead, they had a tradition, a ceremony. Every few years, when the council decided the pack had too many weak links, they gathered the Omegas who'd failed their trials, the ones who couldn't shift properly or showed signs of rebellion, and sent them to the tomb of the Forsaken. It was called an offering. It was called an honor. It was a death sentence with prettier words. Elira had heard the stories since she was a child. Omegas went into the tomb. None came out. The official story was that they joined the ancestors or ascended to serve the old gods. The truth, whispered in the servant quarters late at night, was simpler. They died. Starved, froze, or went mad in the dark. The tomb was sealed with ancient magic. Once you went in, the door didn't open again. Not for anyone. Not ever. The cart jerked to a stop. "We're here." Elira lifted her head. The forest around them was dead. Not winter dead, wrong dead. The trees were blackened and twisted, their branches reaching toward the sky like clawed hands. No bird sang, no wind moved. Even the snow on the ground looked gray, as if the color had been leached out of it. And there, rising from the center of a clearing, was the tomb. It was massive, carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to swallow light, covered in runes that glowed faintly red in the dim afternoon. The door, if you could call it that, was a slab of iron twice the height of a man, etched with symbols Elira didn't recognize. But she felt them, felt the weight of them pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Out. The guard dismounted, yanked the chain attached to Elira's cuffs. She stumbled, barely caught herself before hitting the ground. The other 2 Omegas were hauled out just as roughly. A small group waited near the tomb entrance. Council members, their formal robes stark white against the dead landscape. At the center stood Elder Torin, the head of the Moonveil Council, a man whose face was all sharp angles and cold eyes. He looked at the 3 of them the way someone might look at spoiled meat. Omega Elira Vance. His voice was flat, emotionless. Omega Sable Wren. Omega Mira Kane. You have been found unworthy by pack law. Your wolf is weak, your bloodline tainted. You are a burden to the strong, a drain on our resources, and a threat to our future. Elira's jaw tightened. She didn't respond. There was no point. By the authority of the Moonveil Council and the laws established by our ancestors, you are hereby offered to the tomb of the Forsaken. May you find peace and service to those greater than yourselves. Service. The word was a joke. There was no service, just death. Elder Torin stepped aside. 2 guards moved forward, each grabbing one of the Omegas. Sable, the one who'd been crying, started to scream, "No, please! I'll do better, I swear, Silence her. One of the guards clamped a hand over her mouth. Sable thrashed, desperate, wild-eyed. Mira didn't resist. She let them drag her forward like a puppet with cut strings. Then they came for Elira. She didn't fight, didn't scream. She walked, because fighting would give them satisfaction. Screaming would prove she was weak. And Elira Vance had spent her entire life refusing to give these people anything. The closer they got to the tomb, the heavier the air became. It pressed down on her shoulders, wrapped around her ribs, sank into her bones. The runes on the door pulsed brighter now, reacting to their presence. One of the guards stepped forward, placed his palm against a specific symbol. The ground trembled. Ancient gears groaned somewhere deep inside the stone. Slowly, so slowly it felt like the world was holding its breath, the iron door began to slide open. Darkness poured out. Not the absence of light, something thicker, heavier, alive. Sable stopped screaming. She went limp in the guard's arms, staring into that void with wide, glassy eyes. In! The guard shoved them forward. Mira stumbled into the darkness first and vanished without a sound. Sable was thrown in next. Her scream echoed once, twice, then cut off abruptly. Elira stood at the threshold. Behind her, Elder Torin spoke. "Any last words, Omega?" She turned her head, just enough to meet his eyes. "I hope you choke on them." His face didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance that she still had a spine. "Throw her in." Hands grabbed her shoulders. Elira didn't resist. She let them push her into the dark. The cold hit first, then the smell, old stone, damp earth, something else underneath that made her stomach turn. Her boots hit the ground hard, jarring her knees. She heard the door grinding shut behind her, the sound of iron scraping stone, and then silence. Total. Absolute. Suffocating silence. Elira stayed on her knees, breathing hard, waiting for her eyes to adjust. They didn't. The darkness here was complete. She couldn't see her own hands in front of her face. "Sable?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Mira?" No answer. She stood slowly, chains rattling. Her fingers brushed the wall, stone, smooth and freezing cold. She followed it step by careful step, trying to map the space. It was a corridor, narrow. The walls on either side, the ceiling low enough that if she reached up, she could touch it. She kept moving, one hand on the wall, the other stretched out in front of her. Then her boot hit something soft. Elira stopped, crouched down, reached out. Her fingers touched fabric, then skin, cold, waxy. A body. She jerked back, heart hammering, forced herself to breathe. Not the first, she thought, and not the last. She stepped over it and kept walking. The corridor opened into a larger space. She could tell by the way the air changed, the way her footsteps started to echo. She stopped, listening, and heard it. Breathing. Not hers. Not Sable's or Mira's. Something else. Elira froze. The sound was deep, slow, rhythmic, like the breathing of something massive. It came from ahead, somewhere in the dark. "Who's there?" Her voice barely made it past her lips. The breathing stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Low, rough, like gravel dragged over broken glass. "You shouldn't be here." Elira's blood turned to ice. She spun toward the sound, but there was nothing, just darkness. "Where are you?" "Closer than you think." She took a step back. Her chains clinked. The sound echoed too loud in the silence. "They sent you to die." The voice was closer now, right in front of her. "Another offering, another waste." "I didn't ask to be here." "No one does." Something moved in the dark. A shape, massive, shifting. Elira's wolf stirred inside her for the first time in years, hackles rising, sensing danger. "What are you?" A pause, then quieter. "What's left?" She didn't know what that meant, didn't want to know. She backed up another step, and her shoulders hit the wall. "Stay away from me." "Or what?" There was no mockery in the voice, just exhaustion. "You'll fight? Run? There's nowhere to go, girl. The door doesn't open. Not from this side." "Then I'll find another way out." "There isn't one." "I'll make one." The shape stopped moving. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it sounded different, less dead, less empty. What's your name? Elira hesitated. Why? Because I want to know what to call you before you die. Elira? She lifted her chin even though she knew he couldn't see it. Elira Vance. Elira. He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting the word. I am Kael. Just Kael? Just Kael. Another silence. Elira's heart was still racing, but the immediate terror had faded into something else. Wariness, yes, but also curiosity. Because whoever, whatever this was, it was talking. And that meant it was alive. Which meant maybe she didn't have to die here after all. How long have you been in here? She asked. Long enough to lose count. Years? Centuries. Elira's breath caught. That's not possible. Neither is this tomb. Yet, here we are. She pressed her back harder against the wall, trying to think. If he'd been here for centuries, then he was either insane, lying, or telling the truth, and she wasn't sure which option was worse. Why haven't you escaped? Because I'm bound. His voice hardened. Chained, sealed, just like you. Then why are you still alive? Because dying would be too easy. The bitterness in those words made something twist in Elira's chest. She understood that feeling. She'd lived it. They threw me away, she said quietly. Told me I was worthless, defective. So they sent me here to rot. And what do you believe? Elira blinked. No one had ever asked her that before. Not once in her entire life. I believe, she swallowed hard, I believe they're afraid. Of you? Of what I could become if they didn't stop me. Silence. Then, softer, you might be right. Elira's hands clenched into fists. The chains dug into her wrists, but she didn't care. I'm not dying here. I don't care what they want. I don't care what this place is. I'm getting out. How? I don't know yet. Then you'll die. Maybe. She pushed off the wall, took a step forward into the dark. But I'll die trying, which is more than I can say for rotting in the corner waiting for it. She heard him move. Closer now, close enough that she could feel the displacement of air. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. And then, against all logic, against every instinct screaming at her to run, Elira reached out into the darkness. Her fingers touched something solid, warm, skin. She felt him go still. What are you doing? His voice was barely a whisper. Proving you're real. Her hand moved up, over a broad shoulder, along the line of a collarbone, up to a jaw rough with stubble. She felt him breathing, felt the tension coiled in every muscle. You're not a ghost, she said. No. And you're not a monster. That's debatable. Then what are you? His hand came up, slowly, carefully, and wrapped around her wrist. Not tight, not threatening, just contact. I was a king, he said. A long time ago. Elira's heart stuttered. And now? Now I'm a prisoner, same as you. She should have pulled away, should have been terrified, but all she felt was a strange, reckless calm. Then maybe we should stop being prisoners. Kyle's grip on her wrist tightened just slightly. The seal on this tomb has held for 200 years. It was designed by the most powerful shamans the Pax ever produced. It doesn't break. Everything breaks. Elira pulled her hand free, turned back toward where she thought the door was. You just have to know where to hit it. She started walking. Heard him follow, silent as a shadow despite his size. There's a seal on the door, he said, a rune matrix. It feeds on life force. Every Omega they've sent in here has tried to break it. All of them died. How? It drains you, pulls the energy straight out of your body until there's nothing left. Elira stopped. Thought about that. What if you reversed it? What? What if instead of trying to break the seal, you fed it, overloaded it? Silence. Then, that would take an enormous amount of power, more than any Omega possesses. But you're not just anything, are you? She turned back toward him, even though she still couldn't see. You were a king. That means you were alpha, strong. Was being the operative word. I've been drained for 2 centuries. There's almost nothing left. Almost isn't nothing. She heard him exhale. Long, slow, like he was fighting something inside himself. Even if I had the strength, he said carefully, the seal is designed to kill anyone who tries to channel power through it. It would burn you alive from the inside out. Then we do it together. Elira. I'm already dead. She cut him off, voice hard. That's what they wanted. That's why they sent me here. So I have 2 choices, die slow or die trying. And I've never been good at doing what I'm told. Another silence. Longer this time. When Kael spoke again, his voice was different, sharper, almost impressed. You're insane. Probably. This will kill you. Maybe. If it doesn't work, then at least I'll die on my feet instead of on my knees waiting for it. She heard him move closer, felt the heat of him in the cold dark. Why? He asked. Why fight this hard for a life that's only ever hurt you? Alira's throat tightened. For a moment, she couldn't speak, because the truth was too big, too raw, too real. Because, she finally whispered, if I don't, then they win, and I'd rather burn this whole world down than let them win. Kael's hand found hers in the dark. His fingers were calloused, scarred, warm. Then let's burn it. They found the door by following the wall, Elira's hand trailing along the cold stone until her fingers hit iron. The runes were easier to locate. They glowed faintly, even in the pitch black, pulsing with a sickly red light that made her skin crawl. Here, Kael's voice was right behind her. The seal is a spiral pattern, 7 runes forming a circle, with the anchor point in the center. Can you see them? I can feel them. Elira reached out, placed her palm flat against the iron. The metal was freezing, so cold it burned. She felt the runes immediately, a low vibration that traveled up her arm and into her chest, wrapping around her ribs like a vice. It's alive, she breathed. In a manner of speaking. It's designed to recognize life force and consume it. That's why it glows brighter when you touch it. She pulled her hand back, shaking. So if we channel power into it, it will try to eat us. Kael's hand settled on her shoulder, which is why we have to be faster. Hit it with everything at once. Overload the matrix before it can adapt. How do we do that? You need to open yourself up. Let your wolf surface. Elira's stomach dropped. I can't. You have to. You don't understand, her voice cracked. My wolf is broken. I can barely feel her. I've never fully shifted. That's why they threw me away. Kael was quiet for a moment. Then his hand moved from her shoulder to the back of her neck, warm and steady. Your wolf isn't broken, he said. She's caged. There's a difference. How do you know? Because I can feel her. His thumb brushed the base of her skull, and Elira gasped as something inside her moved, a presence she'd almost forgotten, stirring in the dark. She's been locked down so long she doesn't know how to surface. But she's there, and she's strong. Tears stung Elira's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. I don't know how. I'll help you. Kael, trust me. And maybe it was the darkness. Maybe it was the fact that she was already dead and had nothing left to lose. Maybe it was the steady warmth of his hand on her neck, the first gentle touch she'd felt in years. But she did. Okay. Put both hands on the seal. Elira turned back to the door, pressed both palms flat against the iron. The runes flared brighter, and pain shot through her arms, sharp, burning, like her blood had turned to acid. She hissed through her teeth but didn't pull away. Now breathe, Kael said. His chest was against her back now, solid and warm, one arm wrapping around her waist. Close your eyes. Find your wolf. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've just been told so many times you can't that you stop trying. So stop listening to them. Stop listening to me. Listen to her. Elira closed her eyes, tried to push past the pain, past the fear, past the voice in her head that had been screaming worthless, defective, broken for as long as she could remember. And there, deep down, buried under years of shame and silence, she felt it. A pulse, a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Her wolf. I feel her, Elira whispered. Good. Now let her out. She's scared. So are you. Do it anyway. Alira's breath hitched. The pain in her arms was getting worse, spreading up into her shoulders, her chest. The seal was already feeding on her, draining her life force drop by drop. But she pushed deeper, reached for that pulse, that heartbeat, and wrapped her mind around it. I need you. The wolf stirred. Please. A growl, low, uncertain. We're going to die here unless you help me. So either you come out or we both rot in the dark. Your choice. The growl turned into a snarl, and then power exploded through her. Elira screamed. Her body convulsed, every nerve ending on fire as her wolf surged to the surface for the first time in her life. She felt bones shifting, felt fur rippling under her skin, felt her senses sharpen until she could hear Kyle heartbeat, smell the stone and iron and old magic, taste the cold air on her tongue. That's it. Kyle's voice was rough, strained. Hold on, I'm coming in. His power joined hers, darker, heavier, ancient. It crashed into her like a tidal wave, and for a moment Elira thought she'd drown in it. But then their energies twisted together, braided, fused into something new, something unstoppable. The runes on the door blazed white hot. The seal screamed, a sound like tearing metal, like breaking glass, like the world ending. More! Kyle shouted over the noise. Don't stop! Elira poured everything she had into the seal. Every ounce of rage, every moment of humiliation, every night she'd spent cold and hungry and hating herself. She shoved it all into that ancient magic and pushed. The seal cracked. Light exploded outward. Elira was thrown backward. Kyle's arms the only thing keeping her from hitting the ground. The door shuddered. The runes shattered, red light splintering into 1,000 pieces. And then, with a sound like a mountain breaking, the iron door blew open. Cold air rushed in, real air, fresh air. Elira collapsed against Kyle, gasping, her whole body shaking. But she was smiling. We did it, she breathed. We did. She turned in his arms and for the first time saw him. Even in the dim light filtering in from outside, even with her vision still blurred from exhaustion, she could tell. Kyle was beautiful. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and eyes like molten gold. His hair was black, long enough to brush his shoulders, and there were scars, dozens of them, crisscrossing his chest and arms. But it was his eyes that held her, fierce, haunted, alive. Hello, Elira Vance, he said, and his mouth quirked into the smallest smile. Hello, just Kyle. For one perfect moment, they just looked at each other. Two broken people who dragged each other back from the edge. Then Kyle's expression hardened. We need to move. They'll have felt that. Who? Everyone. He pulled her to her feet, and together they ran toward the open door. Outside, the dead forest was no longer silent. Elira could hear shouting in the distance, the sound of hoofbeats, orders being barked. The council's guards, realizing something had gone wrong. This way! Kale grabbed her hand, pulled her into the trees. They ran. Behind them, the tomb stood open, its 200-year seal shattered, its prisoner free, and the girl they'd sent to die very much alive. And somewhere deep inside Elira, buried under the exhaustion and the fear and the pain, something new was growing. Hope. The forest swallowed them whole. Elira's lungs burned as she ran, her bare feet slipping on frozen ground, branches whipping past her face. Behind them, the shouts were getting closer, organized now, coordinated. The council had mobilized fast. Keep moving. Kale's voice was low, urgent. His hand was iron around her wrist, pulling her forward even when her legs screamed to stop. I can't, she gasped. Yes, you can. A horn blasted through the trees, long, mournful, echoing. Elira's blood turned to ice. She knew that sound. Every wolf knew that sound. The hunt. They're calling the packs, she panted. They're going to track us. Let them try. Kale veered left, dragging her down a steep embankment. Elira's foot caught on a root and she went down hard, hitting the ground with enough force to knock the air from her lungs. Kale hauled her back up without breaking stride. We need to get to water, he said. Break the scent trail. There's a river, Elira coughed, tasted copper. East, maybe 2 miles. Too far. They'll catch us before we make it. Then what? Kyle stopped so suddenly she crashed into his back. He went absolutely still, head tilted, listening. Elira heard it a second later. Footsteps. coming from the east, and the west, and the north. They were surrounded. "We need to split up," Elira said quickly. "I'll go south, draw them off." "No." "Kael, if they catch you—" "They won't." His eyes were blazing gold now, his wolf close to the surface. "And I'm not leaving you. You barely know me." "Doesn't matter." The footsteps were closer now. Elira could see movement through the trees, shadows, dozens of them, closing in like a noose. Kael's hand tightened on hers. "Do you trust me?" "That's a stupid question right now." "Elira." She looked up at him, this stranger who'd spent 2 centuries in darkness, who'd helped her break an unbreakable seal, who was looking at her like she mattered. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." "Then hold on." Before she could ask what he meant, Kael yanked her against his chest and shifted. The transformation was instantaneous. 1 second she was pressed against warm skin, the next she was falling into thick black fur. Kael's wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any pack wolf she'd ever seen, with eyes that glowed like molten gold and fangs as long as her fingers. He dropped low enough for her to scramble onto his back, then took off running. The world became a blur. Trees whipped past so fast they were just streaks of black and gray. The wind tore at Elira's hair, her clothes, her skin. She wrapped her arms around Kael's neck and held on for her life as he tore through the forest like a force of nature. Behind them, wolves howled. Elira risked a glance back and her heart stopped. There had to be 30 of them, full-pack wolves, all shifted, all massive and fast and deadly. At the front was a wolf she recognized even from a distance. Elder Torin's personal guard, a brute named Garrick, who'd beaten her twice for insubordination. "They're gaining!" she shouted over the wind. Kael didn't respond, just ran faster. They burst out of the tree line and Elira's stomach dropped. They were at the edge of a cliff. Below, maybe 100 feet down, a river churned white and violent over jagged rocks. Kael skidded to a stop at the edge. The pack wolves erupted from the forest behind them, spreading out in a semicircle, cutting off any retreat. One by one they shifted back to human form, naked, uncaring, predators who knew they had their prey cornered. Garrick stepped forward. He was built like a bear, all muscle and scars, with dead eyes that had never held anything resembling mercy. "Well," he said, voice like gravel, "that was stupid." Kael shifted back. Elira slid off his back and he immediately stepped in front of her, placing his body between her and the pack. "Walk away," Kael said. His voice was quiet, deadly. Garrick laughed. "Walk away from a rogue Omega and a—" He stopped, eyes narrowing as he really looked at Kael for the first time. His expression changed. "What the hell are you?" "Your worst mistake if you don't leave. Now." "You're the prisoner." Garrick's voice had lost some of its certainty. "The one from the tomb. The council said you were just a legend, a story to scare—" "The council lied about a lot of things," Kael cut him off. "This is your only warning. Turn around. Go back. Tell them you lost us in the forest. We have orders. Your orders don't mean anything to me. They will when we drag you back in chains." Garrick gestured to his wolves. "Take them. Alive if possible. Dead if necessary." The pack moved forward as one. Kael's hand shot out, grabbed Elira's wrist. "Jump!" "What?" He pulled her over the edge. The world tilted. Elira's scream was ripped away by the wind as they fell, the cliff face blurring past, the river rushing up to meet them. She had just enough time to suck in a breath before they hit. The water was liquid ice. It punched the air from her lungs, dragged her down, spun her like a leaf in a hurricane. She couldn't tell which way was up, couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Her fingers clawed at nothing, found nothing. A hand locked around her arm. Pulled. Elira's head broke the surface and she gasped, choking, as Kael hauled her against him. The current was brutal, smashing them against rocks, trying to tear them apart. "Breathe!" Kael shouted over the roar of the water. "Stay with me!" Elira coughed up river water, her whole body shaking violently from the cold. "Can't." "Yes, you can." He shifted his grip, got one arm under her shoulders, and started swimming. Not against the current, with it, using it, angling them toward the far bank. Behind them, she heard splashes. The pack had jumped too. Of course they had. They're following. I know. The river curved sharply ahead. Alira saw white water, heard the roar of rapids. Kyle swore and kicked harder, trying to reach the bank before the current pulled them into the worst of it. They didn't make it. The rapids grabbed them and everything became chaos. Water in her mouth, her nose, her lungs. Pain as her shoulder slammed into a rock. Kael's grip slipping, tightening, slipping again. The world reduced to a violent blur of white and black and cold. Then suddenly, air. Alira's feet hit something solid. Kael dragged her upright and she realized they'd washed into a shallow eddy near the bank. He half carried, half shoved her up onto the rocks, then collapsed beside her. For a long moment they just lay there, coughing, gasping, shaking. Are you hurt? Kael's voice was rough. I don't know. Everything hurt. Everything was numb. You? I'll live. Alira forced herself to sit up. They were maybe a mile downstream from where they'd jumped, on the opposite bank from the pack. Through the trees she could still see movement, wolves on the other side of the river, pacing, searching for a crossing point. We bought ourselves maybe 10 minutes, she said. Then we used them. Kael stood, pulled her up. Can you walk? Can you? His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Stubborn. You say that like it's a bad thing. They stumbled into the forest. Alira's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely think. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin, freezing in the air, turning her body into a block of ice. Beside her, Kael wasn't much better. His lips were blue, his movements getting slower. We need shelter, Alira managed. Fire. Fire means smoke. Smoke means, I know what it means, but we'll die of exposure before they catch us if we don't get warm. Kael looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. There. He pointed to an outcropping of rock maybe 50 yards ahead. Natural overhang. We can build a small fire, keep it contained. They made it to the overhang and collapsed under the shelter of the stone. Kael immediately started gathering deadwood, snapping branches with his bare hands, moving with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone who looked half dead. How are you doing that? Alira asked through chattering teeth. Practice. He piled the wood, struck 2 stones together. Sparks flew. 200 years gives you a lot of time to learn how to survive on scraps. The wood caught. Flames licked up, small but steady. Heat bloomed in the small space. Alira crawled closer, held her hands to the fire. Feelings started to return to her fingers. Painful, burning, but real. Take off your shirt, Kael said. She blinked at him. What? You'll die of hypothermia if you stay in wet clothes. Take them off. I'm not looking, and I don't care. I've seen everything there is to see, Alira. Your modesty isn't worth your life. He turned his back, started stripping off his own soaked clothes. After a moment's hesitation, Alira did the same. She peeled off her shirt, her pants, hung them near the fire to dry. The cold bit at her bare skin, but the heat from the flames was already helping. Kael tossed her something, his shirt, barely damp. Wear this. But I don't need it. She pulled it on. It was huge on her, hung to her knees, but it was warm and dry and smelled like him, pine and smoke and something wild. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire, listening for sounds of pursuit. They'll find us, Alira said quietly. You know that, right? The council won't stop. They can't afford to. Why? Because you're proof. Kael looked at her. Of what? That everything they've built is a lie. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. The tomb was supposed to be permanent, unbreakable, a way to disappear anyone they didn't want without technically killing them. But you got out. And if you got out, then the magic isn't absolute. The council isn't all-powerful, and people might start asking questions they don't want answered. Questions like what? Like how many others have they buried? Like what else they've lied about? Like why anyone should listen to them at all? Kael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. You're smarter than they gave you credit for. They never gave me credit for anything. Their loss. Alira looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd escaped. In the firelight, the scars on his body were more visible. Some were old, faded to white. Others looked newer, angrier. And there, On his chest over his heart was a mark she recognized. A seal. They branded you, she breathed. Kale glanced down at the mark, then back at the fire. The council 2 centuries ago wanted to make sure I couldn't break free, so they bound me with blood magic, tied my life force to the tomb itself. That's why you were so weak. That's why I was dying, slowly. The seal was designed to drain me over centuries, keep me alive but powerless. He touched the mark absently. When you broke the door, you shattered part of it, but the rest is still there. What does that mean? It means I'm living on borrowed time. Eventually, the seal will finish what it started. Elira's chest tightened. How long? I don't know. Weeks, maybe months if I'm lucky. There has to be a way to break it. If there is, I haven't found it, and I've had 200 years to look. Then we'll find it together. Kael looked at her like she'd said something insane. Why would you do that? Because you saved my life. You saved mine first. Then we're even. She met his eyes. And because I'm tired of watching people die, because the council decided they were inconvenient. Something shifted in Kael's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or hope. You don't even know me, he said. I know enough. Elira poked the fire with a stick. I know you could have left me in that tomb, could have used me as a distraction and run. But you didn't. That tells me what I need to know. Silence settled between them again, comfortable this time. Tell me about the world, Kael said eventually. What's changed in 200 years? Elira let out a hollow laugh. Everything and nothing. Start with everything. So she did. Told him about the 5 great packs that now ruled the territories, each with their own council, their own laws. About the technology that had crept into even the most traditional communities. About the wars that had come and gone, the treaties, the betrayals, and about the Omegas. We're commodities now, she said bitterly. Traded between packs to strengthen bloodlines. The strong ones anyway. The rest of us, the ones who don't shift right or aren't pretty enough or show too much independence, we're disposal. That's not how it was, Kael said. Before, Omegas were valued, protected. Times change. Not always for the better. No, not always. Another silence. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. They both tensed. They're still searching, Elira whispered. Then we keep moving at first light. Kael stood, checked their clothes. Still damp, but better. Get some sleep. I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I've slept for 2 centuries. I'll manage. Elira wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a riptide. She curled up near the fire, Kael's shirt wrapped around her, and let her eyes drift closed. She was asleep in seconds. She woke to the sound of voices. Elira's eyes snapped open. The fire had burned down to embers. Outside the overhang, the sky was gray with early morning light, and there were people talking, close. She sat up slowly, carefully. Kael was pressed against the rock wall near the entrance, perfectly still, listening. He caught her movement and held up one hand. Stay quiet. Tracks lead this way, and a male voice was saying, fresh, maybe an hour old. Could be deer, another voice suggested. Could be, or could be our runaways. Elder Torin wants them alive. He said alive if possible. Dead works too. Elira's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at Kael. He pointed to the back of the overhang, where a narrow gap in the rocks led deeper into the hillside, an escape route. Elira nodded, started to move. Her foot kicked a loose stone. The sound was tiny, barely audible. But in the silence of the forest, it was a gunshot. There! Footsteps pounded toward them. Kael grabbed Elira's hand and they ran for the gap in the rocks. Behind them, she heard the guards scrambling up the hillside, shouting orders. The gap was narrow, barely wide enough for Elira to squeeze through. Kael had to go sideways, his shoulders scraping rock. They emerged on the other side into a small ravine choked with dead brush. Go! Kael shoved her forward just as the first guard made it through the gap. Elira ran. Branches tore at her face, her arms. Behind her, she heard the guard curse, heard Kael's snarl, heard the meaty sound of fist hitting flesh. She broke out of the brush into open forest and skidded to a stop, There were 5 more guards waiting, all shifted, all with their teeth bared. Alira's wolf surged to the surface, clawing at her insides, desperate to get out. But she'd never fully shifted, didn't know how. The most she'd ever managed was partial, claws, fangs, eyes. Not enough, she thought desperately, not nearly enough. The lead wolf lunged. Alira dove sideways. Claws raked across her shoulder, tearing through fabric and skin. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with her own claws out. Barely an inch long, pathetic compared to theirs, but it was all she had. The wolf circled back for another attack. Alira backed up, searching for an escape route, finding nothing. The other 4 wolves were spreading out, cutting off every exit. I'm going to die here, she realized. After everything, I'm going to die in the dirt, like they always said I would. The wolf charged, and then Kyle was there. He hit the wolf mid-leap with enough force to send it flying into a tree. The crack of bone was audible even over the snarls. Kyle shifted, massive, terrifying, beautiful, and threw himself at the other 4 wolves. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. Kyle moved like death itself, all speed and power and rage. He tore through the pack wolves like they were made of paper, his jaws crushing throats, his claws opening bellies. Blood sprayed across the snow. The wolves tried to fight back, tried to coordinate, but they were outmatched. In less than a minute, it was over. 4 bodies lay in the snow, their blood steaming in the cold air. The 5th wolf, the one Kyle had thrown into the tree, whimpered once and went still. Kyle shifted back. He was covered in blood, his chest heaving, his eyes still glowing gold. "We need to move," he said. His voice was steady despite everything. "Now!" Alira couldn't move, couldn't look away from the bodies. She'd seen violence before. The packs weren't gentle, but this was different. This was efficient, brutal, final. "Alira!" Kale was in front of her now, blocking her view. "Look at me." She did. "I need you to focus. Can you do that?" She nodded numbly. "Good. We're going to run, and we're not going to stop until we're out of pack territory. Understood? They'll follow. Let them." His smile was sharp and cold. "I'm done running." He took her hand and pulled her into the forest. They ran for hours, through deadfall and frozen streams, over hills and through valleys. Alira's lungs burned, her legs screamed, her wounded shoulder throbbed with every step. But she kept going, because Kyle was right. Running was all they had. The sun was high overhead when they finally stopped. They'd reached the edge of a vast clearing, and on the other side, maybe half a mile away, was a structure. Not a building. Not exactly. It looked like ruins. Stone walls half collapsed, covered in vines and moss. But there was something about it that felt deliberate, purposeful. "What is that?" Alira asked. Kale's expression had gone very still. "The old capital." "Of what?" "My kingdom." Alira looked at him sharply. "You're 200 years ago, before the council, before the 5 packs, there was one kingdom, one ruler, me." He stared at the ruins like they were a ghost. "They destroyed it when they imprisoned me, scattered the people, burned the records, made sure no one would remember. But you remember. Every stone, every hall, every face." His jaw tightened. "They took everything from me, Alira, my crown, my people, my life. And they sealed me away so I'd have eternity to think about it." "Why? What did you do?" Kale looked at her. For the first time since they'd met, she saw something in his eyes that looked like shame. "I tried to change things," he said quietly. "Tried to give Omega's rights, protection, a voice. The Alphas hated it, said I was destroying the natural order, so they revolted, killed everyone loyal to me. And when they couldn't kill me," he touched the seal on his chest. "They did this instead." Alira's breath caught. "You were trying to help us." "I was trying to fix a broken system, and it got everyone I loved killed. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" His voice was bitter. "I pushed too hard, too fast. Thought I could force change through sheer will. I was arrogant, stupid, and people died because of it. So what are you going to do now?" Kale looked back at the ruins. "I don't know. Part of me wants to burn the whole world down for what they did. Part of me just wants to disappear. Find somewhere quiet and wait for the seal to finish me. And the third part? He glanced at her, surprised. What third part? The part that's standing here talking to me instead of doing either of those things. A long silence. Then, so softly she almost didn't hear it, the third part thinks maybe I could try again. Do it right this time. Then do it. Elira, you said yourself, you have weeks, maybe months. You can spend that time hiding, or you can spend it fighting. And I don't know about you, but I'm done hiding. Kael stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. You're insane. So you keep saying. We'd be fighting the entire pack structure, 5 councils, thousands of wolves. I know. We'd probably die. Probably. And you still want to do this. Elira stepped closer to him, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin, and looked him straight in the eye. They threw me away, she said, told me I was worthless, sent me to die. And you know what? Maybe I am worthless by their standards. Maybe I'll never be the strong, submissive Omega they wanted. But I'll be damned if I let them keep doing this to others. So yes, I want to fight, even if it kills me, especially if it kills me, because at least then I'll die for something that matters. Kael's hand came up, cupped her face. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, impossibly gentle for someone who'd just torn through 5 wolves like they were nothing. You terrify me, he whispered. Good. You should be scared of what we're about to do. I'm not scared of that. His eyes were intense, burning. I'm scared of how much I want to believe you, how much I want this to work. Then believe. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You just decide to. Same way you decided to help me in the tomb. Same way I decided to trust you. She covered his hand with hers. We're already in this, Kael. We might as well see it through. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. You're going to get me killed, he said. Probably. And I'm going to let you. Definitely. He laughed, a real laugh, rough and surprised, and pulled back. All right. We do this your way. We fight. Our way, Elira corrected. We do this our way. Our way, he agreed. They stood there in the clearing, 2 people who should have been dead, planning to wage war against the entire world. And somewhere behind them, getting closer with every passing second, the pack hunters followed their trail. The hunters were 3 miles behind them when Elira felt it. A pulse, deep in her chest, where her wolf lived. Not pain, something else, something that made her stumble mid-step, one hand flying to her sternum. Kael caught her before she fell. What's wrong? I don't know. Her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. Something's different. Different how? She didn't have words for it. It felt like a door opening inside her, like something that had been locked tight her entire life was finally, slowly, beginning to crack. We need to keep moving, Kael said, but his eyes were sharp with concern. Can you run? Yes. Elira pushed off him, forced her legs to move. The feeling didn't fade. If anything, it got stronger with every step toward the ruins. They crossed the clearing at a sprint. Up close, the old capital was even more devastated than it had looked from a distance. Entire walls had collapsed into rubble. What had once been grand archways were now just fragments of stone, covered in creeping vines that looked almost deliberate in how they'd consumed everything. But beneath the decay, Elira could see the bones of something magnificent. The scale of it alone was staggering. This had been a city, not just a palace. Dozens of buildings, all connected by wide stone pathways, all centered around a massive structure at the heart of the complex. This way. Kael led her through what had once been a gate. The metal doors were long gone, leaving just the frame, still standing despite 2 centuries of neglect. Inside, the ruins were quieter. The wind didn't reach here. Sound was muffled, distant. Elira's footsteps echoed off broken stone as they moved deeper into the complex. Where are we going? She asked. The throne room. If there's anywhere that might still have defenses, it's there. Defenses? After 200 years? The magic that built this place was old even when I was king. It doesn't die easily. They navigated through corridors choked with debris, past rooms that had once been living quarters, armories, council chambers. Everything was picked clean. Anything valuable had been looted long ago. But the structure itself remained, stubborn and enduring. The throne room was at the center of everything. The ceiling had partially collapsed, letting in shafts of gray daylight that illuminated the space in broken columns. The throne itself was still there, carved from a single piece of black stone, covered in the same runes that had sealed the tomb. Kyle stopped at the threshold. His whole body had gone rigid. "I haven't been here since the night they came for me," he said quietly. "I can still smell the blood." Elira looked at the floor, saw dark stains in the cracks between stones that soap and time hadn't erased. "Who died here?" "Everyone who tried to protect me. My personal guard, my advisors, His voice broke. "My mate." The word hit Elira like a physical blow. "You had a mate." Her name was Sarah. She was Beta. Strong, brilliant, beautiful. Kale's eyes were fixed on a spot near the throne. "They killed her right there. Made me watch while they bound me with the seal. Told me I'd have eternity to remember what happened when you challenged the natural order." Kyle, "Don't." He held up a hand. "Don't tell me it wasn't my fault. Don't tell me she wouldn't want me to blame myself. I've had 200 years to work through that particular guilt, and I'm nowhere close to done." Elira didn't know what to say, so she just stood beside him in the ruins of his past and let the silence speak for her. After a long moment, Kale shook himself. "We're not here for a history lesson. We need to secure this place before the hunters arrive." "How? There are no doors, no walls intact enough to The defenses aren't physical." Kale walked to the throne, placed his hand on the armrest. The runes flared to life. Not red like the tomb, but gold. The old kings built fail-safes into the capital, wards designed to protect against attack. And you think they still work? Only one way to find out. He pressed his palm flat against the largest rune. Light exploded outward, racing along the floor in branching patterns, climbing the walls, spreading across the ceiling. Elira stumbled back as the entire throne room lit up like the sun. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air shifted. Elira felt it like a physical pressure, like invisible walls sliding into place around them. The temperature dropped. Her ears popped. "What did you do?" she breathed. "Activated the barrier. Nothing gets in or out without my permission." "For how long?" "Until I lower it, or until it runs out of power." He looked at the throne, at the runes that were now pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. "Could be hours, could be days. Hard to say after this long." A howl echoed from somewhere outside the ruins. Close, too close. "They're here," Elira said. "Let them come." Kale's expression was hard. "They can't get through the barrier." "You sure about that?" "Reasonably." Another howl, then another, then a dozen at once, surrounding the ruins. Elira moved to what had once been a window, looked out. Wolves were pouring into the clearing, not just guards now, but full hunting parties. She counted at least 50, maybe more, all shifted, all circling the ruins like sharks. "That's a lot of wolves," she said. "They're scared." Kale came to stand beside her. "They know what I am, what I was. They're not taking chances." One of the wolves, larger than the others, with a distinctive scar across its muzzle, shifted to human form. Elira recognized him immediately. Elder Torin. He looked exactly as she remembered, cold, calculating, dressed in the formal robes of the council, despite the freezing temperature and the violence of the hunt. "Kyle Draven," Torin's voice carried across the clearing. "The dead king walks. I confess, when our guards reported you'd escaped the tomb, I didn't believe it." Kale said nothing, just watched. "Come out," Torin continued. "Surrender peacefully, and I promise you'll be treated with dignity. We'll give you a trial, due process, everything you deserve." "Liar," Elira muttered. "He knows no one's listening," Kyle said. "This is theater. For the others." Torin waited. When no response came, his expression hardened. "Very well, you've made your choice." He gestured to the wolves. "Breach the barrier. Bring them out. Dead or alive, I don't care anymore." The wolves charged. They hit the invisible barrier like a wave hitting a cliff. The impact was visible. A flash of gold light. A shockwave that rippled through the air. Wolves yelped, thrown backward by the force of it. Several didn't get up. Torrn's face went pale. What? The old magic, Kyle called out. Still works, still strong. You want us. You'll have to do better than that. We'll starve you out. You'll be waiting a long time. We have time. Do you? Torrn's smile was cold. That seal on your chest is still active, Draven. I can see it from here draining you with every breath. How long before it finishes what we started 2 centuries ago? Kael's hand moved unconsciously to the mark. Elira saw the flash of pain in his eyes before he buried it. Long enough, Kael said. Torrn studied them for a long moment. Then he turned to one of his guards. Bring the specialist. The what? Elira whispered. Nothing good, Kael said grimly. They didn't have to wait long. A figure emerged from the tree line, a woman, old and bent, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff. She wore robes that were more patches than original fabric, and her hair was white as bone. But her eyes were sharp and bright and very, very aware. A shaman, Kael breathed. The old woman approached the barrier slowly, studying it the way someone might study a particularly interesting insect. She raised one withered hand, pressed it against the invisible wall. The barrier flared gold. She smiled. Old work, she said. Her voice was surprisingly strong. Very old, very elegant. Keyed to bloodline, I think. Only a Draven could lower it from inside. Her eyes fixed on Kael. But every spell has a weakness. Every ward has a limit. Not this one, Kael said. Oh, child. The shaman's smile widened. Everything breaks. You just need to know where to push. She began to chant, low, rhythmic, in a language Elira didn't recognize. The air around the barrier started to shimmer, then crack. Hairline fractures appeared in the invisible wall, spreading like ice breaking on a frozen lake. That's not possible, Kael said, but his voice held doubt now. The shaman's chanting grew louder. The cracks widened. Elira could see the strain on the old woman's face, the way her whole body shook with effort, but she didn't stop. We need to run, Elira said. Where? The barrier surrounds the entire complex. Then we fight. There are 50 of them. Then we die fighting. Better than waiting here like... The barrier shattered. The sound was like glass breaking, amplified 1,000 times. The shockwave knocked Elira off her feet. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision blurred. When she looked up, the wolves were pouring through. Kael shifted instantly, throwing himself into the flood of bodies. His black wolf tore through the first wave, but there were too many. For every one he brought down, 3 more took its place. Elira tried to shift, felt her wolf surge upward, then slam against an invisible wall inside her own body. The frustration of it made her want to scream. She was useless. Again, just like they'd always said. A wolf broke through Kael's defense, charged straight at her. Elira threw herself sideways, barely avoided the snapping jaws. She hit a wall, scrambled to her feet, looked around desperately for a weapon. Her hand closed on a piece of broken stone. It wasn't much, but it was something. The wolf came at her again. Elira swung the stone with everything she had. It connected with the wolf's skull with a sickening crunch. The wolf yelped, staggered, blood streaming from its ear. Then another wolf was on her, teeth closed on her arm. Elira screamed, tried to pull away, but the wolf's grip was iron. She could feel bones grinding, could feel her skin tearing. Then Kael was there, his jaws closing on the attacking wolf's throat. He ripped it away from her, threw it across the throne room hard enough to crack stone. But he was bleeding now. Deep gashes across his side, his shoulder. There were too many wolves coming too fast. Elira! Kael's voice in her mind, the bond they'd formed in the tomb, still there, still strong. The throne! Get to the throne! What? Trust me. She ran. Dodged between fighting bodies, slipped on blood, kept moving. A wolf tried to block her path, and she drove the stone into its eye without thinking. It fell away howling. She reached the throne and collapsed against it, panting. The runes were still glowing, still pulsing with that steady rhythm. Now what? She shouted. Put your hand on it. That's your bloodline magic. It won't... Do it! Elira slammed her palm against the largest rune. The world exploded into light. It wasn't gold this time. It was white. Pure. blinding. Elira screamed as power surged through her, not draining her like the tomb seal, but filling her, every cell in her body suddenly alive with energy that felt ancient and new and absolutely overwhelming. Her wolf didn't just surface, she erupted. The shift was instant, violent, and complete. 1 second Elira was human, the next she was wolf, and not just any wolf. She was massive, easily as large as Kyle, covered in fur so white it seemed to glow. Power radiated off her in waves. The attacking wolves stopped, stared. Several actually whimpered and backed away. Elira looked down at herself, at paws the size of dinner plates, at fur that seemed to shimmer with its own light. She could feel her wolf now, not as a separate entity locked away, but as part of her, integrated, complete. Impossible, someone breathed. Elira's head snapped up. Elder Torrhen stood at the entrance to the throne room, his face the color of old ash. Behind him, the shaman had gone very still.
"The white wolf," the shaman whispered. "The lost bloodline." "What?" Torrhen's voice cracked. "She's royal." The shaman's eyes were wide with something that looked like fear. "The last heir of the original Omega line. I thought they were all dead." "They are dead. We made sure—" Torrhen stopped himself, but too late. "You killed them." Kale's voice was cold fury. He'd shifted back to human, standing beside Elira's wolf form. "You murdered the Omega royalty." "They were a threat," Torrhen said.
Too powerful. They would have challenged everything you built on their corpses, Kyle finished. That's what this has all been about. The councils, the hierarchy, the systematic degradation of Omegas. You were afraid they'd remember what they used to be. Torrhen's hand moved to his belt, where a knife hung. One survived, apparently, but that ends now. He lunged forward. Kale moved to intercept, but he was already wounded, already slow. Torrhen was faster. The knife flashed. Elira didn't think. She just moved. She hit Torrhen mid-strike, her massive body slamming into him with enough force to send them both crashing through the partially collapsed wall. They rolled across broken stone, a tangle of fur and flesh and rage. Torrhen managed to get the knife up. It sank into Elira's shoulder and she yelped, more from surprise than pain. The wound burned, but she'd felt worse, had survived worse. She'd survived being thrown away, being starved, being sent to die. She'd survived this too. Her jaws closed on Torrhen's wrist. She bit down hard and felt bones snap. Torrhen screamed, dropped the knife. Elira released his wrist and went for his throat. "Wait!" The shaman's voice cut through the chaos. "Wait, child!" Elira stopped, her teeth an inch from Torrhen's neck. The elder was pinned beneath her, his eyes wide with terror, blood streaming from his mangled wrist. "Kill me!" he spat. "Go on! Prove you're just another monster." "She's not the monster here." Kale appeared beside them. He looked at Elira. "But it's your choice. He's responsible for everything that happened to you. Everything that happened to thousands of Omegas like you. If anyone has the right to end him, it's you." Elira looked down at Torrhen, thought about all the nights she'd spent cold and hungry, all the times she'd been beaten for speaking out of turn, all the scars on her body that would never fully fade. She thought about Sarah, about Sable and Mira, about every Omega who'd been sent to that tomb and never came out. Her jaws tightened. Torrhen closed his eyes, waiting for the end. Elira stepped back. "No," she said, and the word came out perfectly clear despite her wolf form, resonating with power that made the very air vibrate. Torrhen's eyes flew open. "What? I'm not going to kill you." Elira shifted back to human, standing over him naked and bloody and utterly unashamed. "Because that's what they do. The monsters. They kill anyone who threatens them and call it justice." She looked around at the assembled wolves, at the guards who'd stopped fighting, at the shaman who was staring at her like she was a ghost, at Kyle who was watching her with something that might have been pride. "I'm going to do something worse," Elira continued. "I'm going to let you live, and you're going to go back to your council and tell them what you saw here. Tell them the White Wolf has returned. Tell them the Omega bloodline isn't dead, and tell them that everything they built on lies and murder is about to come crashing down. You can't. I just shifted for the first time in my life, broke a 200-year-old seal, and activated magic that was supposed to be tied to a bloodline I didn't know I had. What exactly can I do? Torin had no answer for that. Elira looked at the guards. Anyone else want to try killing me, or are we done here? Silence. Then one by one the guards lowered their heads. Not in submission, not quite, but in acknowledgement. The shaman stepped forward slowly. May I approach? Elira nodded warily. The old woman came close enough to study her face. Your eyes, she said softly. You have your mother's eyes. Elira's heart stopped. You knew my mother? I knew of her. She was the last of the white wolves before you. They said she died in childbirth, that the baby died with her. Clearly, they lied about the second part. Who was she? Queen Lissa, wife to King Kael, Sarah's younger sister. The world tilted. Elira looked at Kael, saw her own shock reflected in his face. That's not possible, Kael said hoarsely. Lissa died when the council attacked. She was pregnant when you were imprisoned, the shaman said. Hid it from everyone, including you. After you were sealed away and Sarah was killed, Lissa fled. The council hunted her for months. When they finally caught up to her, she was in labor. They let her deliver, then killed her. Told everyone the baby was stillborn. But you weren't. Kael's voice was barely a whisper. He was looking at Elira like she was made of glass. You survived. Someone must have hidden you, the shaman said. Placed you with the Vance family, let you grow up thinking you were defective. It was the only way to keep you safe. If they thought you were broken, they'd never look twice. Elira's mind was reeling. My whole life was a lie. Your whole life was survival. The shaman gripped her staff tighter. And now you're here, against all odds. Perhaps that means something. It means the council's worst nightmare just came true, Kael said. His hand found Elira's, squeezed gently. The king and queen, together again. Different bodies, different lives, but the same bloodline. We're not... Elira stopped, looked at their joined hands, felt the bond between them. Not just the magical connection from the tomb, but something deeper, older. Like their souls recognized each other even if their minds didn't. Sarah was my mate, Kael said quietly. But Lissa was my sister by marriage, my family. Which makes you... family, Elira finished. Not lovers, not mates. Something that transcended both. The weight of it settled over her like a crown she'd never asked for. This changes everything, Torin said from the ground. He was sitting up now, cradling his broken wrist. You realize that. If word gets out that the royal bloodline survived, when word gets out, Elira corrected, because you're going to tell them. They'll come for you with everything they have. Good. She looked at the ruins around them, at the throne that had activated to her touch, at the wolves who were watching her with a mixture of fear and awe. Let them come. I'm tired of hiding, tired of running, tired of pretending I'm something less than I am. She turned to Kael. You said you wanted to try again. Do it right this time. Well, here's your chance. We rebuild. Not the old kingdom, something new, something better. With what army? Kael asked. But he was smiling now, fierce and sharp. We have ruins and reputation. That's it. We have truth, Elira looked at the assembled wolves. And we have them. Us? One of the guards, a young male with nervous eyes, stepped forward. We were sent to kill you. You were sent to kill who they told you we were. Rogues, criminals, threats. But now you know the truth, so you have a choice. She met each wolf's eyes in turn. Go back to the council. Pretend this never happened. Keep living in their hierarchy, following their rules, crushing anyone who doesn't fit their perfect mold. Or stay. Help us build something different. Why would we do that? Another guard asked. Because every single one of you has someone you love who doesn't fit the mold. An Omega sister who's treated like property. A Beta brother who's too weak for the Alpha packs. A mate who's the wrong designation, the wrong bloodline, the wrong everything according to their laws. Elira's voice rang out clear and strong. The councils rule through fear, through making you think the system is natural, inevitable, the only way things can be. But it's not, and I'm living proof. Silence fell over the ruins. Then the young guard who'd spoken first dropped to one knee. I'll stay. Another guard followed, then another. Not all of them. Maybe a third of the hunting party. But it was enough. It was a start. Torin laughed bitterly. You're all fools. You can't fight the 5 councils. They'll crush you. Maybe, Kael said. He hauled Torin to his feet none too gently. But we're going to try anyway. Now get out of my capital. Torin stumbled toward the tree line, still cradling his wrist. The shaman watched him go, then turned back to Elira. A word of advice, young queen, she said. Power is easy to claim. It's keeping it that's hard. And you've just painted a target on your back that every alpha in 5 territories will see. I know. Do you? The shaman's eyes were piercing. Because this isn't just about you anymore. Every wolf who follows you now shares that target. Every Omega who hears this story and dares to hope, if you fail, the councils will make sure the punishment is legendary. They'll turn you into a cautionary tale so terrifying that no one will ever try again. Then we won't fail. The shaman studied her for a long moment. Then, to Elira's shock, she bowed. I hope you're right, child, for all our sakes. She turned and walked into the forest, leaning on her staff, leaving Elira and Kael alone with their new army. An army of 30 wolves. Against 5 councils. Against centuries of tradition and hierarchy and systematic oppression. It was suicide. It was impossible. It was exactly what Elira had been born to do. She looked at Kael. So, we're really doing this. Appears so. He surveyed their recruits, then the ruins. We'll need shelter, training, supplies, a plan that's more than fight and hope. Can the barrier be restored? Maybe. It'll take time. Then we start there. Elira moved toward the throne, felt the power still humming through the stone. We make this place defensible. We train, we prepare, and then we march on the capital, Kael finished. Take the fight to them before they can organize a real response. That's insane. You keep saying that like it's going to stop you. It won't. Elira smiled, a real smile, fierce and wild and free. But I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Kael moved to stand beside her, both of them looking out over the broken throne room, the shattered walls, the wolves who'd chosen to follow them despite every reasonable instinct screaming to run. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. I never knew her. Neither did I. Not really, but I knew her sister. And if Lissa was anything like Sarah, she was brave and brilliant and absolutely refused to accept the world the way it was. He looked at Elira. Sound familiar? Before Elira could answer, one of the new recruits, a female beta with burn scars down her neck, approached hesitantly. Your Majesty, she said, and Elira nearly laughed at the title. We found something. In the lower levels. You should see this. They followed her downstairs, choked with debris, through corridors that hadn't seen light in 2 centuries. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Elira's breath misted in the air. They emerged into a vast chamber carved directly from bedrock, and there, covering every surface, were runes. Thousands of them, glowing faintly in the darkness. What is this? Elira breathed. Kael moved forward slowly, his hand trailing along the wall. The heart of the capital, where all the major spells were anchored. I didn't think it would still be intact. It's more than intact, the beta said. It's active. We think there's something sealed down here. Show me. She led them to the center of the chamber. There, set into the floor, was a circle of runes so complex Elira's eyes hurt trying to follow the pattern. And at the center of the circle was a stone vault sealed tight. Can you open it? Elira asked Kael. I don't know. This seal is different from the others, more powerful. It would take an enormous amount of energy to... Elira placed her hand on the vault. The seal shattered instantly. The vault swung open, and light poured out. Not magical light. Actual sunlight, warm and golden. Completely impossible this far underground. Inside the vault was a single object. A crown. It was beautiful, delicate, made of some metal Elira didn't recognize, woven through with silver threads that seemed to move on their own. Set at the center was a stone that pulsed with the same white light as her wolf form. The Omega crown, Kael whispered. I thought it was destroyed with everything else. What does it do? It doesn't do anything. It just is. A symbol. Proof of the royal bloodline. He looked at her. Your bloodline. Elira reached for it slowly. Her fingers closed around the metal and it was warm, almost alive. The moment she lifted it from the vault, every rune in the chamber blazed to life. Power flooded through her. Not overwhelming this time. Controlled, purposeful, like the magic recognized her and was offering itself willingly. Put it on, Kael said. I'm not. You are. You've always been. You just didn't know it. His eyes were fierce. Claim it, Elira. Claim what's yours. She lifted the crown. It felt impossibly light in her hands. For a moment she saw her reflection in the polished metal, saw the girl she'd been, broken and discarded and worthless. Then she placed the crown on her head. The world ignited. Every wolf in the chamber dropped to their knees, including Kael. Elira felt the power of the crown connecting her to the ruins, to the old magic, to every stone and spell and ancient protection that had been built into this place. She was the capital now, and the capital was her. Rise, she said, and her voice echoed with authority that made the very walls tremble. They rose. Elira looked at Kael, saw the awe in his eyes, the fear, the hope. We're going to war, she said. Yes. We're probably going to die. Probably. But we're going to make them remember us first. Kael's smile was sharp as broken glass. Every single one. Above them, far away in the capital cities of the 5 great packs, council members were receiving reports, messages delivered by shaking guards and terrified hunters. The dead king walks. The white wolf has returned. The old magic still lives. And in throne rooms and council chambers across the territories, alphas who'd thought themselves untouchable felt something they hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. Word spread like wildfire through dead grass. Within 3 days, the old capital was no longer a ruin occupied by 30 wolves. It was a camp, a movement, a beacon for every omega, every beta, every wolf who'd ever been told they didn't matter. They came in 1s and 2s at first, then in groups, then in packs. Elira stood on what remained of the eastern wall and watched them arrive. A steady stream of bodies crossing the frozen landscape, drawn by rumors that had already taken on mythic proportions. The dead king returned, the white wolf reborn, the old magic awakened. 243, Kael said, coming to stand beside her, as of this morning. And we have food for maybe 100. I know. Shelter for less than that. I know. Elira looked at him. You're not worried. Oh, I'm terrified, but worrying won't feed them. He nodded toward the crowd below. Besides, half of them brought supplies, and the hunters among them have already started organizing hunting parties. They're self-organizing. They're desperate. Desperate people are efficient. Kael's expression was grim. The question is whether we can turn desperation into something that won't get them all killed. Below, in what had once been the training yard, the beta with the burn scars, her name was Mara, was putting new arrivals through basic combat drills. Most had never held a weapon. Some had never even fully shifted, but they were learning. We need more time, Elira said. We don't have it. The councils have called a gathering. Elira's stomach dropped. When? 6 days from now. In the Moonvale capital, all 5 councils, every major pack leader, every alpha worth the title. Kael's jaw was tight. They're calling it a unity summit, but what they really mean is a war council. Against us. Against the idea of us. Against everything we represent. Then we move first. Elira turned from the wall. We don't wait for them to come here with an army. We go to them. That's suicide. They'll have thousands of wolves. We have barely 200, most of whom can't fight. Which is exactly why they won't expect it. Elira's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. They think we'll fortify here, build our strength, wait for them to lay siege. That's what any rational commander would do. So we do the irrational thing. We do the only thing that might work. She headed for the stairs. Gather the officers, everyone who's been organizing the new arrivals. We need a plan. Elira, Mom, we march on the capital during their summit, while every alpha in 5 territories is in one place, making speeches about unity and strength. We walk in and tell them exactly what we are. Kael caught her arm. If this goes wrong, it already went wrong. The moment they threw me into that tomb, the moment they killed your mate and imprisoned you for 2 centuries, the moment they decided some wolves matter more than others. She pulled free, but gently. We're not trying to win, Kale. Not yet. We're trying to survive long enough to make them listen. And if they don't listen, then at least we'll die on our feet. They gathered in the throne room that night, 20 wolves who'd emerged as natural leaders in the chaos of the past few days. Mara was there, and the young guard who'd been first to kneel, whose name was Finn. A grizzled old beta named Gareth, who'd fought in the last territorial war. An Omega named Cassia who'd escaped her pack 3 months ago and somehow survived alone in the wilderness. Alira stood at the center, the crown still on her head. She'd tried taking it off once. The magic had burned her hands until she put it back. Apparently, the crown had opinions. The 5 councils are meeting in 6 days, she said without preamble. We're going to crash that meeting. Silence. Then Gareth laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. You want to march into a capital city full of alphas and just, what? Ask nicely for them to change? No, I want to make them acknowledge us. Acknowledge that we exist, that we're not going away, that the old hierarchy is broken. They'll slaughter us, someone said. Maybe, or maybe they'll hesitate, because we're not a threat they can categorize. We're not rogues, we're not rebels, we're the legitimate royal bloodline, backed by the old magic, wearing the crown they thought was destroyed. Illyra met each pair of eyes. We're their worst nightmare wrapped in their own mythology. That's a lot of maybes, Mara said carefully. It's all we have. What exactly are you proposing? Finn asked. Illyra moved to the center of the room where she'd laid out a map of the territories, old, yellowed, found in one of the intact chambers. The summit is being held at the Grand Hall in Moonvale. It's designed for ceremony, not defense. Large open spaces, lots of windows, multiple entrances. Also lots of guards, Gareth pointed out. True, but on Summit Day, most of the guards will be inside the hall itself, protecting the council members. The outer perimeter will be lighter than usual. How do you know that? Because I worked in the Moonvale capital. Before they threw me away, I was a servant in the council chambers. I cleaned those halls for 2 years. The memories tasted bitter, but they were useful. I know the layout, I know the routines, and I know exactly when they'll be most vulnerable. She traced a line on the map. The summit starts at noon. Speeches, posturing, the usual performance. By mid-afternoon, they'll break for a meal. That's when we enter. Not attacking, walking. In formation. With the crown visible and the old magic active enough that every shaman in the building will feel it. They'll still try to stop us, Cassia said quietly. Yes, which is why we don't go in as warriors. We go in as witnesses. Illyra looked at Cassia. How many Omegas do we have in camp? 73, most of them runaways like me. I want them front and center, unarmed, visible, a reminder of what the councils have been doing for decades. Understanding dawned in Cassia's eyes. You want to put the victims on display. I want to make it impossible for them to pretend we don't exist. Every alpha in that room has profited from the current system. We're going to make them look at the cost. That's cruel, Mara said, asking the Omegas to expose themselves like that. It's their choice. I won't order anyone to do it. But if they're willing, Alira's voice hardened, then yes. We use every weapon we have, including the truth. Gareth studied the map. Even if we get inside, even if we make our statement, how do we get out alive? We don't plan on leaving. What? We're not raiding the capital, we're claiming it. Illyra pointed to the Grand Hall. This building was built by my ancestors. The old kings held court here before the councils existed. By law, by tradition, by every precedent they claim to uphold, it's mine, and I'm taking it back. You're insane, someone muttered. Probably, but I'm also right. The councils rule because everyone believes they're legitimate. Because the system has been in place so long, no one remembers it was ever different. We're going to remind them. By occupying the Grand Hall, by reclaiming the throne room, by sitting in the seat that belonged to my mother and grandmother and every queen before them, and daring the councils to remove me by force in front of every witness they invited. The room erupted into argument. Half thought it was brilliant. Half thought it was suicide. Elira let them debate, let them work through the fear and excitement and terrible hope. Finally, Kyle spoke. He'd been silent until now, watching from the shadows. "It could work," he said. The room fell silent. "It's insane," he continued. "It's dangerous. It will probably end with all of us dead or imprisoned. But it could work. Because Elira's right. The councils derive their power from tradition, from the belief that they represent the natural order. But their entire structure is built on a foundation of lies. They murdered the royal lines. They rewrote history. They turned omegas from equals into commodities." He stepped into the light. "We don't need to defeat them militarily. We need to break the illusion. And nothing breaks an illusion faster than the truth standing in front of you wearing a crown." "So we're doing this," Finn said. It wasn't quite a question. Elira looked around the room. "We're doing this, but only those who choose to come. I won't order anyone into this. If you want to stay here, fortify the ruins, build something separate from the councils. That's valid. That's survival. But I'm going to Moonvale, and I'm taking back what they stole." One by one, hands went up. Mara, Finn, Gareth, Cassia, all 20 officers, and through them, their followers. "We'll need to move fast," Gareth said. 6 days to train, organize, and march. It's not enough. Then we make it enough. The next 5 days were chaos given purpose. Every wolf with combat experience became a trainer. Every omega who'd worked in council households became an intelligence source. The hunters brought back enough game to feed the camp. The shamans, 3 had arrived, drawn by rumors of the old magic, began teaching basic wards and protections. And Elira learned to be a queen, not the decorative kind, not the political kind, the kind that walked through camp at midnight checking on sentries, that helped haul water from the stream, that sat with terrified omegas and listened to their stories until her heart felt like it would break. "You're going to exhaust yourself," Kyle said on the 4th night. He found her in the throne room, still wearing the crown, surrounded by maps and supply lists. "I'll rest when we're done. We're never going to be done. Then I'll rest when I'm dead." Kale sat down beside her. "You know that's a real possibility, right? Dead. Very soon. Probably painfully." "I know. And you're doing this anyway." "What choice do I have?" Elira's voice cracked. "These people came here because they believed in something, because for the first time in their lives, someone told them they mattered. If I back down now, if I let fear stop me, then I'm just another person who failed them. You can't save everyone." "I can try." Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're so much like her." "Who?" "Your mother, Lissa." He smiled sadly. "Sarah used to tell me about her, how stubborn she was, how she'd argue with anyone who said omegas were lesser, even when it put her in danger, how she refused to accept the world the way it was." He touched the edge of Elira's crown, gentle. "She would have loved you, been so proud of you." "I wish I'd known her." "You carry her forward, that's better." Elira leaned against his shoulder, too tired to maintain distance. "I'm scared." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." "What if I'm wrong? What if this gets everyone killed for nothing?" "Then at least you tried. At least you gave them a choice. That's more than the councils ever did." They sat in silence, surrounded by maps and plans for a war they probably couldn't win. "The seal is getting worse," Elira said quietly. She felt Kyle stiffen. "I know." "How long?" "Honestly, I don't know. A week. Maybe 2. The magic from the crown helps, but the seal is still draining me. Eventually, it'll win. Then we find a way to break it." "Elira? No." She sat up, met his eyes. "You don't get to give up. Not now. Not when we're this close." "Close to what? A dramatic death in a council chamber?" "Close to changing everything." She grabbed his hand, pressed it against the seal on his chest. "This mark represents everything they did to you. Everything they took. But you're still here, still fighting, and as long as you're fighting, that seal doesn't get to win. It's blood magic. The only way to break it is, then we'll find blood magic of our own. We have shamans now. We have the old capital. We have resources we didn't have 3 days ago. Her grip tightened. You saved me in that tomb. Let me save you now. Kael looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a fierce hug. Not romantic. Familial. The way you'd hold the last piece of family you had left in the world. All right, he said. We try. On the morning of the 6th day, they marched. 230 wolves, the rest stayed to guard the ruins and care for those too young or old to fight. They moved in tight formation, with the Omegas at the center, protected on all sides. Alira walked at the front, the crown blazing white in the early sun. Kael was at her right, Mara at her left. They didn't hide, didn't take back roads. They marched straight down the main highway toward Moonvale, and every settlement they passed stopped to stare. Word spread ahead of them. By the time they were 10 miles from the capital, refugees were fleeing in the opposite direction. Shopkeepers were boarding up windows. Guards were scrambling to the walls. They're terrified, Finn said, looking at the empty roads. Good, Elira replied. Fear makes people react, and reactions reveal truth. They reached the capital walls at noon. The gates were closed, the ramparts lined with archers. A horn blasted, long, low, warning. Elira stopped 50 yards from the gate, raised her hand. Behind her, 200 wolves went silent. A voice called down from the wall. State your business. Open the gates, Elira called back. I'm here to address the council. The summit is closed to outsiders. I'm not an outsider. I'm Queen Elira, daughter of Queen Lysa, heir to the Omega throne. And this is my city. Shocked silence from the walls. Then hurried conversation, guards arguing, runners being sent. They waited. 5 minutes, 10, 20. Finally, the gates opened. Not fully, just wide enough for a single person to exit. It was Elder Torin, his wrist still bandaged from where Elira had broken it. He walked out alone, unarmed, and stopped 10 yards from her. You have remarkable timing, he said, or remarkably bad judgment. I can't decide which. Open the gates. Let us through. So you can slaughter the councils? I think not. We're not here to slaughter anyone. We're here to talk. Torin laughed. You march on our capital with an army and expect us to believe you want to talk? This isn't an army. It's a witness. Every wolf here has a story, a name, a reason they couldn't survive in the system you built. I'm giving them a voice. By force. By right. This city was built by my bloodline. The Grand Hall was my family's seat. You've been squatting in our home for 2 centuries, pretending you have legitimacy. I'm here to collect what's mine. You think wearing a crown makes you a queen? No, but surviving everything you people threw at me does, and so does this. Elira's power flared, white light erupting around her, visible even in daylight. Every wolf on the wall flinched. I am the last of the royal Omega line. The magic recognizes me. The old laws recognize me. The only question is whether you will. Torin's face had gone pale. Even if I wanted to let you in, the other councils would never allow it. Then I'll ask them myself. You're demanding an audience. I'm taking one, with or without permission. Torin looked at the army behind her, looked at the crown, looked at Elira's eyes, fierce and unyielding and absolutely certain. You'll be slaughtered the moment you set foot inside. Maybe. Or maybe you're more afraid of how it will look if you murder a queen in front of every alpha witness you invited. Elira stepped closer. What's it going to be, Torin? Do you open the gates and let history decide? Or do you turn us away and spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have stopped what comes next? For a long, terrible moment, Torin said nothing. Then he turned and called up to the walls. Open the gates. Elder, are you sure? I said open them. The gates swung wide. Elira didn't hesitate, didn't look back. She walked through those gates like she owned them, because according to every law the councils claimed to uphold, she did. Her army followed. The streets of Moonvale were packed. Word had spread through the capital faster than fire. Wolves lined the roads, pressed against buildings, climbed onto roofs to get a better view. Some stared in awe, some in horror, some in desperate, fragile hope. Elira saw them all. Saw the Omega servants peeking from doorways, saw the Beta laborers stopping their work, saw the children, Dozens of them, too young to understand but old enough to know something monumental was happening. They marched through the city in absolute silence. No chanting, no weapons drawn, just the steady rhythm of hundreds of feet on stone. The grand hall loomed ahead, massive, imposing, built from white marble that gleamed in the afternoon sun. The doors were open. Inside, Elira could see movement, hear raised voices. She stopped at the threshold. "Everyone stays calm," she said quietly, knowing her wolves would hear. "No violence unless they attack first. And if they do, you run, scatter, survive. Understood?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. "Elira," Kyle's hand on her shoulder. "Once we go in, there's no going back." "I know. Last chance to change your mind. I'm not changing my mind." "Good." He smiled, fierce and proud. "Then let's go make history." They walked into the grand hall together. The council chamber was even larger than Elira remembered. A circular room with a domed ceiling ringed by columns, with 5 elevated platforms arranged in a pentagon pattern. On each platform sat a council, the 5 ruling bodies of the 5 great packs, 25 alphas in total, the most powerful wolves in existence. And in the center, where visitors were meant to stand and be judged, there was an empty space. That's where Elira walked. She stopped at the exact center of the chamber. Kyle stood at her right, Mara at her left. Behind them, her wolves spread out in a loose semicircle, Omegas in front, visible, their scars and fear and strength on full display. The council members stared. Then one of them, an alpha woman with silver hair and cold eyes, stood. "Who are you to interrupt these proceedings?" "I am Elira Vance, daughter of Lysa, granddaughter of Marin, great-granddaughter of Celeste, last heir of the Omega royal bloodline." She let power flow through her words, let the crown blaze bright enough to hurt. "And I'm here to reclaim my throne." Chaos erupted, alphas shouting, guards rushing forward, council members calling for order. But Elira didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there wearing her crown while the world she'd been thrown out of lost its collective mind. Finally, someone called for silence. The silver-haired alpha held up one hand and slowly the noise died. "You claim to be royalty," she said. "Based on what? A crown? Bloodline is proven through this." Elira held up her hand. White light blazed from her palm, the same light that had shattered the tomb seal, activated the capital's defenses, made her the White Wolf. "The old magic recognizes me. The crown accepts me. And unless every law and tradition you've built your power on is meaningless, that makes me queen." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Then Torrin spoke from his platform. "Even if your bloodline is genuine, which I'm not conceding, you abandoned your throne. The royal line died out. We built a new system. You murdered my family and built a system on their corpses. That's not legitimacy. That's theft." Elira's voice rang out clear. "And I'm here to reclaim what you stole. Not through violence. Not through conquest. Through law. Your law." "This is absurd." "Then prove me wrong. Prove the bloodline is false. Prove the crown is fake. Prove the magic is a trick." She spread her arms wide. "You have shamans. You have records. You have every resource in 5 territories. So prove it. Or acknowledge that everything you've built is based on a lie." The silver-haired alpha's jaw tightened. "Even if we acknowledged your claim, which we will not, what exactly are you proposing? That we dissolve the councils? Hand you absolute power? That's not going to happen." "I'm not asking for absolute power. I'm asking for recognition, for representation, for Omegas to have rights again." Elira looked around the chamber. "I'm asking you to honor the laws you claim to uphold. To remember that our society was founded on balance, alpha, beta, omega, all equal, all necessary. You broke that balance. I'm here to restore it. By marching in with an army. By standing here with witnesses. Every wolf behind me is proof of your failure. Omegas you discarded. Betas you ignored. Wolves who couldn't survive in the hierarchy you created." Her voice dropped, became intimate despite the vast space. "You can kill us. You can throw us out. But you can't make us disappear. And you can't stop the questions. Because everyone in this city just watched you let us in. Everyone just watched you hesitate. And they're all wondering the same thing. If we're really so powerless, why are you so scared? The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from somewhere in the back of the chamber, a single voice called out, "Let her speak." Another voice joined it. Then another. Not council members, the witnesses they'd invited. Other alphas, pack leaders, observers who'd come for the summit. "Let her speak. Hear her out." "What are you afraid of?" The silver-haired alpha looked furious, but she was also trapped by her own rules, by the witnesses, by the optics of silencing someone who'd just claimed royal status in front of half the territory. "Fine," she said coldly. "Speak. You have until sunset." Elira smiled. "I'll only need 10 minutes. She turned to face the assembled alphas, the council members, the guards, the witnesses, and she told them the truth. Not all of it, just enough. She told them about being labeled defective, about servitude and starvation, about the tomb and the seal and the 200-year-old king they'd erased from history. She told them about the White Wolf bloodline, about the crown that had been hidden, waiting for an heir, about the old magic that still worked because the foundation they'd tried to destroy was stronger than their lies. And she told them what would happen if nothing changed, how the system they'd built was collapsing under its own weight, how omegas were fleeing, how betas were questioning, how the structure they thought was eternal was already falling apart. "You can kill me," she finished. "You can scatter my followers and burn the old capital and pretend this never happened, but it won't matter, because the secret is out. The lie is exposed. And every Omega who hears this story will remember that there was another way, that we weren't always property, that once we wore crowns." She let that sink in, let the weight of it settle over the chamber. "So here's my offer. You acknowledge my bloodline. You give Omega's representation in your councils. You pass laws protecting our rights, our dignity, our freedom. In return, I won't challenge your authority. I'll rule the old capital as neutral ground, a place for those who don't fit your packs. And we'll coexist." "And if we refuse?" the silver-haired alpha asked. "Then I'll build my own kingdom from the wolves you've thrown away, and we'll see whose structure survives." More silence. Then one of the other council members, a grizzled old alpha with scars covering half his face, stood. "I vote to acknowledge the claim," he said. Shock rippled through the chamber. Counselor Darius, the silver-haired alpha, hissed, "You can't be serious. Why not? She's right about the bloodline. I've seen the records. The old queens existed, and unless we want to admit we built our entire society on murder and lies, we acknowledge that bloodlines matter." He looked at Elira. "Besides, she's offering us a way out, a compromise. That's more than we deserve." "This is insanity. This is survival." Another alpha stood, younger, female, with kind eyes. "Look around, Meridian. Look at the wolves she brought. They're not warriors, they're refugees, and they're standing here because they have nowhere else to go. If we slaughter them now, we prove everything she said is true. If we negotiate, we might actually build something better." One by one, alphas stood. Not all of them. Not even half. But enough. Enough to matter. The silver-haired alpha, Meridian, looked around the chamber with something like desperation. Then finally, she sat down. "We'll take a vote," she said. And they did. It took 3 hours. There were debates, arguments, threats, compromises. But when the sun touched the horizon, the vote was called. 17-8 in favor of recognition. Elira's knees almost gave out. She felt Kael steady her, felt Mara's hand on her shoulder. "It's not over," Kael whispered. "This is just the beginning." "I know." But she was smiling. "But it's a beginning." Meridian stood one final time. "The councils acknowledge Elira Vance as heir to the Omega royal line. She will be granted control of the old capital and the surrounding territories. A committee will be formed to draft legislation regarding Omega rights and representation." She looked directly at Elira. "Don't make us regret this." "I won't." "And Draven." Meridian's eyes shifted to Kael. "Your crimes are not forgotten, but in light of recent revelations, they will be reassessed." Kael inclined his head. "That's all I ask." The session was dismissed. As the alphas began to file out, Elira felt the weight of what they'd just accomplished settle over her. They'd won. Not the war, not even the battle, but the first impossible step. Around her, her wolves were crying, laughing, holding each other. Omegas who'd thought they'd die in this chamber were walking out alive, victorious. Alira turned to Kyle. "We actually did it. You did it. We—" She stopped, because Kyle had gone very pale. His hand was pressed to his chest, over the seal, and she could see blood seeping between his fingers. "Kyle?" "It's fine," he said, but his voice was weak. "Just the seal acting up. It doesn't like all the magic we've been using. We need to get you to the shamans. Later. Right now, we celebrate." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let them have this moment. They've earned it." Alira wanted to argue, but he was right. So she turned back to her wolves, accepted their embraces, their gratitude, their tears, and tried to ignore the way Kyle was leaning against the wall, his breathing shallow, his hand still pressed to the seal that was killing him. They had won the day, but the price was still coming due. Kyle collapsed 3 hours after the vote. They'd made it back to the old capital, a victory march that felt hollow the moment Alira saw him stumble. By the time they reached the throne room, he couldn't stand without support. The seal on his chest was black now, spreading like poison through his veins, visible beneath his skin. "Get the shamans," Alira ordered. "All of them. Now!" Mara ran. Alira lowered Kyle to the floor, cradled his head in her lap. His skin was burning, his breathing ragged. "I told you," he managed, voice weak. "The seal doesn't like being challenged. You're not dying. I won't allow it. Not sure you get a vote. Watch me." The 3 shamans arrived within minutes, the old woman from the forest, plus 2 others who'd joined in the past week. They surrounded Kyle, their hands hovering over the seal, faces grim. "It's accelerating," the old woman said. "The blood magic is trying to complete itself. Every time he uses power, every time he defies what the seal was designed to do, it tightens, like a noose." "Then break it," Alira said. "It's not that simple. Blood magic requires blood to undo, a sacrifice of equal value to the original binding." "What does that mean?" The old woman met her eyes. "It means someone has to die. Someone with royal blood, freely given. That's the price." Alira's world tilted. "No. There's no other way." The seal was bound with the blood of King Kyle's mate, Sarah. To break it requires the blood of another royal, and since the other royal bloodlines are extinct, she trailed off, looking pointedly at Alira's crown. "You're saying I have to die to save him. I'm saying that's one option. What's the other option? We let the seal finish its work. He dies. The magic is satisfied, and you live to rebuild what he started." Kale's hand found Alira's. "Don't you dare," he whispered. "Don't even think about it. You do it for me. That's different." "How?" "Because you matter. You're the future. I'm just the man who saved my life, who believed in me when no one else did, who spent 2 centuries in darkness and still came out fighting." Alira's voice broke. "You don't get to call that just anything." "Alira, how long does he have?" she asked the shamans. "Hours. Maybe less. Then we have time to find another way." "There is no other way." "Then we make one." Alira stood, still holding Kyle's hand. "You said blood magic requires equal sacrifice. What if we split the cost? Multiple people, smaller amounts of blood." The old woman frowned. "I've never heard of that working. Have you ever tried?" Silence. Then, "No." "Then we try now." Alira looked around the throne room. Her wolves had gathered. Word had spread fast. Dozens of them, watching with fear and hope. Anyone with royal blood or strong magical heritage stepped forward. No one moved. Then Cassia, the Omega who'd survived alone in the wilderness, raised her hand. "My grandmother was a seer. Does that count?" "It might." Finn stepped forward. "My mother was Beta, but her mother was from the old noble lines." One by one, wolves offered themselves. Not many, maybe 15 total, but it was something. "This is insane," the old woman said. "Even if it works, there's no guarantee the seal won't just redistribute the burden. It could kill all of you. Or it could save him." Alira looked at the volunteers. No one has to do this. If you want to back out, we're here because of you, Cassia said quietly. Because you gave us a choice when no one else would. Let us choose this. She's right, Finn agreed. You don't get to make all the sacrifices. That's not how family works. Family. The word hit Elira like a fist. These people, they'd become her family, not by blood, but by choice, by shared struggle and impossible hope. All right, she said, we do this together. Tell us what we need. The shamans worked quickly, drawing a circle of runes around Kael's prone form. Each volunteer was positioned at a specific point on the circle, hands pressed to the glowing symbols. Elira took the position directly over Kael's heart, where the seal pulsed black and angry. This is going to hurt, the old woman warned. The seal will fight back. If anyone breaks the circle before the magic completes, the backlash could kill you all. Understood. And even if it works, there's a cost. Blood magic always takes something. Be prepared. We're ready. The old woman began to chant. The other shamans joined her, their voices weaving together in harmonies that predated language. The runes blazed to life, not red like the tomb, not gold like the capital's defenses, but silver, pure, clean. Power flowed through the circle. Elira gasped as it hit her, not painful, but intense, like electricity running through her veins. She felt it pulling at something deep inside, something fundamental. The seal on Kael's chest writhed, started to crack. Don't stop, the old woman shouted. The volunteers gritted their teeth, held position. Elira could see the strain on their faces, the way their bodies shook. But none of them let go. The seal cracked wider. Black smoke poured out, dissipating into the air. Kael screamed, a sound of pure agony that made Elira want to let go, to stop this, to find another way. But there was no other way. She held on. The seal shattered. The explosion of power threw everyone backward. Elira hit the wall hard enough to crack stone, slid to the floor gasping. Her vision swam. Her whole body felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. But she was alive. She forced herself up, crawled across the floor to where Kael lay. His chest was unmarked, the seal completely gone, leaving only smooth skin. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. Kael? She touched his face. Kael, wake up. His eyes opened, gold, clear, alive. Elira? His voice was hoarse. What did you do? Saved you. Obviously. He sat up slowly, looked around at the volunteers who were picking themselves up, bruised and exhausted, but whole. You risked all of them. They volunteered, and it worked. She helped him stand. How do you feel? Like I was hit by a mountain, but the seal... He touched his chest, wonder in his eyes. It's gone. Really gone. I can feel the difference. The drain, the constant pulling. It's just gone. Good, because we have work to do. Kael laughed, a real laugh, full and rich. You just saved my life and you're already putting me back to work? Welcome to being part of this family, Atam. The next 3 months were a blur of construction, negotiation, and careful, deliberate change. True to their word, the councils formed a committee to draft Omega rights legislation. Elira sat on that committee, along with Cassia and 2 other Omegas they'd recruited. The debates were brutal, the progress glacial, but it was progress. Meanwhile, the old capital transformed. Walls were rebuilt, structures repaired. The ruins became a functioning city, small but growing. Wolves continued to arrive, drawn by the promise of something different. Not just Omegas, but betas who didn't fit the pack hierarchy, alphas who questioned the system. Elira created sanctuaries within the city, safe houses for those fleeing abusive packs, schools where Omega children could learn without being told they were lesser, training grounds where anyone could learn to defend themselves regardless of designation. The councils hated it, but they couldn't stop it, because Elira had been smart enough to get their acknowledgement in front of witnesses, and backing out now would destroy what little legitimacy they had left. Kael became her advisor, her strategist, her connection to the old ways. Together they pored over ancient texts, rediscovered traditions the councils had buried, found precedents for the changes they wanted to make. There's a law here, Kael said one night, 3 months into the rebuilding. From the Old Kingdom. It says any Omega of royal blood can claim sanctuary status for any territory they control. What does that mean? It means any wolf who makes it to your city is automatically under your protection. The councils can't touch them without your permission. That's huge. That's revolutionary. If we invoke this, your city becomes a permanent refuge. The councils will have to recognize it or admit they're ignoring their own historical laws. Then we invoke it. Elira, this will make you a target. Every alpha who feels threatened, every council member who wants the old hierarchy back, they'll all come for you. Let them come. I've been a target my whole life. At least now I have a city to back me up. They invoked the sanctuary law the next day. The councils protested, threatened, postured, but they couldn't find a legal argument against it, because it was their law, from their cherished history. The sanctuary city of Lumenvale was born. 6 months after the vote, Elira stood on the rebuilt eastern wall and watched the sun rise over her city. It was bigger now. Nearly 1,000 wolves called it home. The buildings were a patchwork of old and new, ancient stone foundations supporting modern structures, gardens growing where throne rooms once stood. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. You know they're calling you the Broken Queen, Mara said, joining her on the wall. I've heard. Not as an insult, as a title. The queen who was broken by the system and rebuilt it anyway. Elira smiled. I like it. The councils don't. Meridian's been lobbying to restrict your sanctuary rights, says you're harboring criminals. We're harboring refugees, there's a difference. Try telling her that. I plan to. There's another summit next month. I'll make my case then. Mara studied her. You've changed. When we first met, you were... She searched for words. Scared, angry, broken. Fierce, determined, refusing to give up. Mara corrected gently. Now you're all that plus confident, powerful. You carry yourself like you were born to this. I was thrown away, remember? Born to servitude and death. And you turned that into a crown. That's the kind of transformation that becomes legend. Elira touched the crown on her head. She still wore it every day, had tried taking it off once more, and the magic had made it very clear that wasn't happening. She'd made peace with it. Legends are what you tell children to help them sleep, she said. This is just survival, one day at a time. Maybe, but those children need the legend, need to believe that someone like them can rise above where they started. Down in the city, Elira could see Omega children playing in the square, laughing, chasing each other, free. She thought about the girls she'd been at their age, scared, alone, worthless. She'd never let another child feel that way, not while she drew breath. There's something else, Mara said carefully. The shamans want to talk to you about the price. Elira tensed. What about it? They've noticed something about the volunteers who helped break the seal. Their magical abilities have diminished, not gone, but reduced, like the spell took part of their power as payment. Are they okay? Physically, yes, but Cassia can't shift as easily as she used to. Finn's sensing abilities are weaker. The shamans think it's permanent. Guilt twisted in Elira's chest. They sacrificed their power to save Kael. They sacrificed it willingly. But they deserve to know what they gave up. Gather them, tonight. I'll tell them myself. That evening, Elira stood before the 15 wolves who'd stood in that circle. They gathered in the throne room, faces curious but not fearful. You've noticed the changes, Elira said without preamble. The shamans have confirmed it. The magic took part of your power, your connection to your wolves, your abilities, your strength. It's diminished, and it's not coming back. Silence. Then Finn spoke. Will we still be able to shift? Yes, just not as easily, not as completely. Can we still fight, still protect the city? Yes, you're just more vulnerable than you were. Cassia smiled sadly. So we're defective now, like you were. Like I thought I was, Elira corrected. Being different isn't the same as being broken. Will this affect our status in the city? Another volunteer asked. Will we be treated differently? Absolutely not. You're heroes. You saved our advisor, our strategist, one of the founding pillars of the city. If anything, you deserve more recognition, not less. But outside the city, Cassia pressed. The councils already think we're weak. This will just confirm it. Then don't go back to the councils. Stay here. Build a life in a place that values courage over raw power. Is that an order? It's an invitation. This is your home as much as mine, more even. You helped build it. You bled for it. You gave up something precious to protect it. That makes you family. The volunteers looked at each other. Some seemed relieved, others uncertain. All of them were processing. Finally, Finn spoke. I don't regret it. What I gave up. Kyle needed saving, and we saved him. That's worth more than perfect shifting. I agree, Cassia said. I've spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough. Now I have proof that I am, scars or not. One by one, the others nodded agreement. Elira felt something in her chest loosen. Thank you, all of you, for your sacrifice, for your faith, for staying when you could have run. Where else would we go? Cassia asked simply. This is home. The second summit was even more contentious than the first. Meridian came prepared this time, with legal arguments and political alliances. She challenged the sanctuary law, questioned Elira's authority, demanded restrictions on who could enter Lumenvale. You're harboring fugitives, she said, wolves who broke pack law and fled justice. I'm harboring refugees, Elira countered, wolves who are being abused, enslaved, or killed for being different. Show me one fugitive who committed an actual crime, not just offended an alpha's ego, and I'll consider extradition. You don't have the authority. I have the authority granted by the council's own recognition. Or are you saying that acknowledgement was meaningless? Meridian's jaw tightened. We recognized your bloodline, not your right to undermine pack authority. I'm not undermining anything. I'm offering an alternative. Wolves still have the choice to stay in your packs, follow your laws. But if they choose to leave, they deserve a place to go that won't destroy them. You're fracturing our society. Your society was already fractured. I'm just making it visible. The debate raged for hours. Other council members joined in, some supporting Meridian, others surprisingly sympathetic to Elira's position. The old alpha who'd voted for recognition, Darius, was particularly vocal in her defense. She's doing what we should have done decades ago, he argued, creating safety nets for those who don't fit the standard model. That's not a threat. That's evolution. It's chaos, Meridian shot back, and it will destroy the pack structure. Then maybe the pack structure needs destroying. The vote was called at sunset. This time it was closer. 13-12 in favor of maintaining Elira's sanctuary rights, with additional oversight from a joint council Lumenvale committee. Not a complete victory, but not a defeat either. Elira left the summit exhausted but satisfied. The councils were splitting, some recognizing that the old ways weren't sustainable, others desperately clinging to power. But the cracks were showing. Change was coming, slow, painful, inevitable. 1 year after breaking free from the tomb, Elira stood in the throne room of Lumenvale and prepared to address her city. The room was packed, not just with her wolves, but with visitors from other territories, journalists from pack newspapers, even a few brave council members who wanted to see what she'd built. Kale stood at her right, healthy and whole. Mara at her left, wearing the insignia of City Guard Captain. Behind her, the volunteers who'd saved Kael's life, now known as the Circle of Sacrifice. And in front of her, thousands of wolves who'd found refuge in her city. 1 year ago, Elira began, I was nobody. A defective Omega sent to die in a tomb because I didn't fit the world's expectations. Today, I stand before you as queen of a city that exists because we refuse to accept the world the way it was. Cheers erupted. Elira waited for them to quiet. We've accomplished things I never dreamed possible. We've built homes, schools, sanctuaries. We've passed laws protecting Omega rights in 3 of the 5 territories. We've created a place where any wolf, regardless of designation, bloodline, or history, can find safety. More cheers. But we're not done. There are still councils who see us as a threat, still packs that treat Omegas as property, still wolves who suffer because they don't fit someone else's definition of worthy. Her voice hardened. So we keep fighting, keep building, keep proving that there's another way. She raised her hand and white light blazed from her palm, the mark of the royal bloodline visible to everyone. I am Elira Vance, the Broken Queen, daughter of Lysa, heir to the White Wolf line, and founder of Lumenvale. And I promise you this, as long as I draw breath, this city will stand. As long as you need sanctuary, you will have it. As long as there are wolves who need proof that they matter, we will be that proof. The crowd roared approval. We were broken, Elira continued, her voice rising. Every one of us, thrown away, cast out, told we were worthless. But we took those broken pieces and built something beautiful. Something that will outlast the councils, outlast the packs, outlast every system that tried to destroy us. She looked around the throne room at the faces watching her with hope and trust and fierce determination. We are not perfect. We are not invincible. But we are here, and we are not going anywhere. The cheers shook the walls. 5 years later, Elira stood on the same wall where she'd watched the sun rise and watched her city spread before her. Lumenvale was no longer small. It was a metropolis now, rivaling the old pack capitals. The councils had tried to restrict its growth 3 times and failed each time, because Elira had been smart enough, patient enough, to play by their rules while simultaneously proving those rules were obsolete. The sanctuary law had expanded. Now there were 5 cities operating under similar principles, each led by wolves who'd learned from Lumenvale's example. The Omega rights legislation had passed in all 5 territories. Not perfect, but a foundation to build on. And the councils themselves were changing. Younger alphas, ones who'd grown up seeing Lumenvale's success, were being elected. Ones who understood that the old hierarchy was dying. Meridian had retired last year, her influence broken by too many failed attempts to destroy what Elira had built. Darius had taken her place as senior alpha, and he'd reached out to Elira personally to discuss cooperation. The world was healing, slowly, but healing nonetheless. Kale joined her on the wall. He moved easier now, the shadow of the seal completely gone. Over the past 5 years, he'd become Lumenvale's chief historian, documenting the old ways, teaching the new generation about their history. The census came back, he said. 15,000 wolves in Lumenvale proper. Another 10,000 in the satellite communities. 25,000 wolves who might not have survived without this place. 25,000 wolves who are alive because you refuse to give up. Elira smiled. Because we refuse to give up. Fair enough. Kale looked out over the city. Sarah would have loved this. Lysa too. They'd be so proud of what you've built. What we've built. You're relentless about sharing credit. You know that? I learned from watching you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up. In the distance, Elira could see the new school, the largest in any territory, where Omega children learned alongside Alpha and Beta children. All equal, all valued. There's something I need to tell you, Kyle said carefully. What? The shamans have been consulting the old texts, about the White Wolf bloodline, about succession. Elira's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach. She'd felt the changes over the past month, hadn't wanted to believe, hadn't wanted to hope. They think... Kale stopped, started again. They think you're pregnant. The world seemed to stop. That's not possible, Elira said, but her voice was uncertain. I'm not... The White Wolf bloodline doesn't work like normal reproduction. The magic itself can create new life when a queen is needed. It's happened before. Rare, but documented. Elira sat down heavily. I'm going to have a child. If the shamans are right, yes. A child who'll inherit all of this. The crown, the city, the responsibility. A child who'll grow up knowing they matter. Who'll never be called defective or worthless. Who'll have a mother who'll burn the world down to protect them. Kyle sat beside her. A child who'll have a better life than either of us did. Tears spilled down Elira's cheeks. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt like hope and terror and overwhelming love for a life she hadn't even met yet. I don't know how to be a mother. You've been mothering this whole city for 5 years. You'll figure it out. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? Then you'll get back up and try again, same as always. Kale took her hand. You've survived everything the world threw at you. Raised a city from ruins, changed laws that were centuries old. Becoming a mother won't be harder than that. It might be.
Probably, but you'll be amazing at it anyway. Lyra laughed through her tears. You have too much faith in me. I have exactly the right amount.
9 months later, Elira gave birth in the same throne room where she'd claimed her crown. The labor was brutal, 36 hours of pain that made breaking the tomb seal feel like a pleasant afternoon. But when they placed the baby in her arms, all of that vanished. A daughter. Small, perfect, with a shock of white hair and eyes that already held hints of gold. What will you name her? Kael asked softly. Elira looked down at her daughter. This miracle, this impossibility, this proof that broken things could create something beautiful. Sarah, she said, after your mate, and Lissa as her middle name, after my mother. Sarah Lissa Vance. Kael's voice was thick with emotion. They'd both be honored. The baby opened her eyes, and they were white, pure white, like Elira's wolf form, the mark of the royal bloodline already present. She's going to be powerful, one of the shamans said, awe in her voice. More powerful than any white wolf in generations. She's going to be loved, Elira corrected. Power is secondary. Over the next few days, word spread through Lumenvale and beyond. The White Wolf Queen had given birth to an heir. The bloodline continued. The future was secured. Wolves came from across the territories to pay respects. Some brought gifts. Others just wanted to see the baby who represented hope for a different world. Even Darius came, representing the councils in an official capacity. I bring greetings from the 5 territories, he said formally. Then, dropping the pretense, and congratulations. She's beautiful. Thank you. The councils have voted to recognize her as heir. When she comes of age, she'll have full rights to the throne and all associated territories. Appreciated, but she'll make her own choices. If she wants to rule, she'll rule. If she wants to do something else, that's her decision. Darius smiled, spoken like a true mother. After he left, Elira sat in the throne room with her daughter, just the two of them. The crown sat on a nearby table. She'd taken it off for the first time since claiming it, and the magic had allowed it. Apparently, it recognized that some things were more important than symbols. Your life is going to be different from mine, Elira whispered to baby Sarah. You won't grow up being told you're worthless. You won't be thrown away or discarded. You'll have a city, a family, a legacy of people who fought to make sure you'd have choices. Sarah made a small noise, her tiny hand closing around Elira's finger. But it won't be easy either, Elira continued. You'll carry expectations, responsibility, the weight of a bloodline that was nearly destroyed. People will look at you and see the future. It's a lot to carry, she kissed her daughter's forehead. But I'll be here, every step, every choice, every moment you need someone to believe in you. I'll be that person, because I know what it's like to face the world alone, and you never will. Kael appeared in the doorway. The city wants to celebrate. They're planning a festival in Sarah's honor. Tell them tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to be here with her. Understood. He started to leave, then paused. 5 years ago, you were in a tomb waiting to die. Now you're a queen with a city and a daughter. That's quite a transformation. It's not a transformation. It's just life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. Well, your messy, complicated, beautiful life has inspired 25,000 wolves and changed the course of history. So there's that. Elira laughed. Go tell the city we'll celebrate tomorrow. Let them have their festival. What will you do? Sit here? Hold my daughter. Remember everyone who fought to get us here, and promise myself I won't let their sacrifices be wasted. Kael nodded and left. Elira sat in the silence, holding Sarah, and let herself feel it all. The grief for what she'd lost, the gratitude for what she'd found, the fear of what might come, the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd built something strong enough to last. Outside, Lumenvale hummed with life. Wolves laughing, working, building, creating futures that wouldn't have been possible without the girl who'd refused to die quietly, the girl who'd taken her broken pieces and forged a crown, the girl who became the woman who became the queen who rebuilt the world. 20 years later, Elira stood in the same throne room and watched her daughter address the combined councils. Sarah was magnificent, 20 years old, tall and strong, with her mother's fierce eyes and her father's, wherever he'd come from in the magical creation, strategic mind. She wore a smaller version of the crown, designed specifically for her, and she wielded it like she was born to it. Because she was. The sanctuary cities have proven successful, Sarah was saying, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. Crime is down. Quality of life is up. We've demonstrated that wolves of all designations can coexist peacefully when given the opportunity. Your mother demonstrated that, Counselor Darius said, old now but still sharp. You're simply continuing her work. With respect, Counselor, I'm expanding it. My mother built Sanctuary. I'm proposing integration, a new system where pack and city coexist, where designation matters less than contribution, where every wolf has legal protection regardless of where they live. The councils stirred, some approving, some resistant, same as always. But they were listening. That was new. Elira watched from the side of the chamber, deliberately not on her throne. This was Sarah's moment, her daughter's vision, her daughter's fight. Kyle stood beside Elira, now gray-haired but still strong. She's better at this than you were. She had better teachers. She had a better foundation. You built that. We built that. They watched as Sarah fielded questions, navigated political traps, built alliances with the skill of someone who'd been training for this her entire life. I'm proud of her, Elira said softly. You should be. She's going to change the world even more than you did. Good, that's what we raised her for. The session ended with a vote to form committees to explore Sarah's proposals. Not a victory yet, but progress. After, as the councils dispersed, Sarah found Elira in the hall. How'd I do? You were perfect. I messed up the part about territorial boundaries. You recovered beautifully. Sarah smiled, young, confident, ready to take on the world. I'm heading back to Lumenvale tonight. There's a delegation from the far territories coming to discuss expansion. You don't have to do everything yourself. I learned from the best. I learned to delegate eventually. Eventually isn't now. Sarah kissed her mother's cheek. I'll see you next week for the council session. She left in a swirl of purpose and energy, trailed by her own advisors and guards. Elira watched her go, feeling the weight of time and transformation. She's going to be fine, Kael said. I know. She's going to be better than fine. She's going to be extraordinary. Like her mother. Better than her mother, because she gets to start from strength instead of survival. They walked through the halls of the Grand Hall, no longer exclusively council property, but shared space between pack and city. The integration had begun, slowly, but it was happening. Do you ever regret it? Kael asked. The choices you made, the risks you took? Elira thought about that, about the girl in the tomb, about the wolves who'd died, about the scars she still carried. No, she said finally. I wish some things had been different. I wish we'd lost fewer people along the way. But regret? No, because every choice led here, to a world where my daughter can stand in front of councils and propose radical change without fear of execution, where omegas have rights, where sanctuary exists, where broken wolves can find home. And to you, healthy, whole, still fighting. Still fighting, she agreed. Always fighting, just for different things now. They reached the exit. Outside, Lumenvale stretched to the horizon. No longer a small refuge, but a thriving metropolis, the heart of a new way of being. Elira touched the crown on her head. She'd worn it for 20 years now. Someday she'd pass it to Sarah, but not yet. Come on, she said to Kael. We have a city council meeting in an hour. Something about expanding the school system. The exciting work of governing. Better than the exciting work of surviving. They walked back to Lumenvale together. Two people who'd started as prisoners and ended as architects of a new world. Behind them, the councils continued their slow transformation. Ahead of them, Sarah was already building the future. And in between, Elira stood, no longer the broken girl thrown away, but the queen who'd taken her breaking and turned it into revolution. She'd been told she was worthless. She'd been sent to die. She'd been erased from history before she even had a chance to make it. But she'd survived. She'd fought. She'd built something that would outlast every person who'd tried to destroy her. The girl with nothing had become the woman with everything, Not because she was chosen, not because she was destined, but because she refused to accept the world the way it was and had the courage to build something better. That was the real magic. That was the real power. That was the legacy that would echo through generations, not of a perfect queen who never fell, but of a broken girl who got back up every single time and kept walking forward, until the world had no choice but to change around her.